Okay, good morning. We're up to Zimun Kuf Tzadi Gimel Sif Dalet. We'll finish off the Zimun. This is breaking up a Zimun. If you've got people who want to leave the Zimun, how exactly does that work? So it says Sif Dalet. It says the Mechaber Shleisha Sheyashvu Le'echol Uberchu Birchas Hamoitzi. If you've got three people who sit down and they begin the meal together, they make hamoitzi. Afilu kol echad eichel mikikara, even though each one is eating from their own separate loaf of bread. Afilu le'ochel adayin kazayis pas, even though they haven't eaten yet a kazayis, einam rishoim lecholik. They can't split. They can't break away because there's a chiyuv zimun. When three people sit down together, they've started the meal, they can't split. It says in the Mishnah Berurah Kaf Ches, einam rishoim lecholik. Hainu afilu rotza ligmar sudosu kodim shigmu acherim. Even if one of them wants to finish off the meal and move on somewhere else, because the chiyuv of the zimun has already activated, has already been chal, and because they began the meal together, therefore einam rishoim lecholik, they're not allowed to leave the others because they need to do the zimun. Sif hey, shleisha sheba'u misholosh chaburos shel shleisha bnei adam v'nischabru elu hashleisha. So you've got three groups of three people, and therefore they're all eating, and each one has got their own separate zimun requirement. But one of each group broke away from those three groups, and they formed a new group of three people. Im zimnu aleihem b'mkoimon, if they do a zimun in their place, the three people did their place. K'goyin shefsiku kol echod l'shnayim ad she'omrazon. So, for example, they stopped. If siku kol echod l'shnayim ad she'omrazon. For example, two of them began the zimun and said the first bracha of Birchas Hamazon, shuv einim yicholim lezamin, then they can't do zimun anymore. In other words, if the original group did the zimun and began benching, then they have lost their right, as it were, to do zimun. It's gone. And therefore, shuv einim yicholim lezamin, they can no longer do a zimun in this new setting. Afilu ochluk achakach yachad v'gamru sudason. Even if they continue eating. So again, what does it mean? You've got three lots of three, and each one had a separate chiyuv for zimun, and one from each of the three broke away. So you've got a new sort of a group of three. If the original group of three somehow did a zimun, so then parcha zimun, the zimun requirement has gone away, and they can't do a zimun in this new setting of three. And if they didn't do the zimun in their new place, they've got a chiyuv to do the zimun, and they can't split. Even if they didn't eat together when they joined together. So let's see the detail in the Mishnah Berurah. Okay, Sif Kotan Lamed. Why? Like I just explained, to kva porach zimun minayu, because their zimun has literally floated away. It's sort of flown away. Al yidei shezimnu alei mikodim, because the original group has made their zimun, that breaks it, that stops it. Umikol mokum birchas hamazon chayav levarich. So they may have left the original group, so they've lost their zimun because they left them, and the zimun happened separately. But nonetheless, chayovim levarich, they've still got a bench birchas hamazon mitchilas birchas hazon u'chodelakamon, from the beginning of benching, like it says in the Ramah and then Siman Reish. Ve'enom rishoim lecholik, and they can't divide up. Kiven shenoyadu ato yachtov, since now they've come together. Since they're coming from a group that originally were chayiv in zimun. What were they leaving for? How come they were in a group of three? Why were they leaving? Because they were originally in a group of three, and they abandoned ship. They left their zimun. And they've been mafsid, they've destroyed the ability of that group to do zimun. So says the Mishnah Berurah, what exactly is the Metzias over here? How could they abandon their chabura, and they should go back to original chabura? Yesh Lomas, it says in the Mishnah Berurah, you got to say that the original group split up. It dissolved. Everyone went their own way. Inami, alternatively, in a situation of oinus or hefsed mammon or something like that, financial loss, you're allowed to leave the zimun before they bench, shegomer hashnaim, before the other two finish eating, ulevarich b'fnei atzman, you can bench yourself. So, for example, you're sitting with a group of 3 people, and we'll discuss these halachas in more detail. It's coming up, but in Siman Reish. But if you need to leave and you can't wait for the other 2 to finish, they're slowly munching their lunch, and you've got to get back to work or whatever it is, then b'mokum hefsed momon, or some other form of oidus, you're allowed to finish early. So Mari Hocha Gam came b'chei Gavna. So you got to say that's what's going on over here. You've got 3 groups of 3 people, and one from each of those 3 groups needed to get on with it. They were in a hurry, so they left their original setting and they grouped together. And therefore, when they now, the 3 of them are in a hurry, they need to leave, and they find themselves together, they can do their own zimun. Says the Mishnah Berurah Lamed Beis for kasha. Chaim on le'el siman kuf pei daled the birchas hamazon tzarich levarich daftu b'makom she'achal. So that's another problem. Then you need to eat. You need to bench. In the place where you ate. Another problem. Well, what are they doing benching in a new place? Surely you have to bench in the place where they ate. So yesh metartzim. Says the Mishnah Berurah, you can answer the hachamari beikru b'shoigeg mimkoimam, that they left their place b'shoigeg. The bezelo matruchin lo selachzel mimkoimai ledas Rambam. We had this before, that if you left b'shoigeg, then Chazal did not require you to go back to your original setting. V'chanal sham b'sif aleph v'chein posku sham achrein b'makom atchak. That's what you got to say. Uve'inyoneinu namin, and so too with our matter. Given the kan yochel lezamin. You can do the zimun here in this new place, and then you go back to the original place and bench b'yechidus. B'shas hatchak domi, that's considered shas hatchak. V'oid yesh loima, another alternative you can say, d'hochi ka'omar, v'afilu la'ochlu yachad kloma, ela kol echad ochal b'fnei atzmai, shelo kavu, de'enom chayovin b'zimun, they're not mechuyev in zimun in the first place, because of sifeis, hachal, however, chayovin, because they were part of an original setting, they originally were obligated in Zimun, therefore it can be considered different. Okay, so an unusual scenario of 3 groups and breakaways. Okay, let's finish off the Siman Sivov. Sholosh chaburos shahoy b'chol achas arba'a. So in the last Sif, in Sif Hey, we had 3 groups of 3 people, and one from each group break away. Now there are 3 groups, but each group has 4 people. Says the Mechaba, Sholosh chaburos shahoy b'chol achas arba'a. Uparash echod mikol hachabura v'nitzaf l'chabura acheres. So one from each of the 3 groups leave. So that's okay because they've left a group of, well, it's not okay, but we'll see that they left a 3 behind. V'zimnu hashloisha nisharim, and those 3, they now do the zimun, right? So you got a group of 4 people. One of them leaves, and the 3 do their zimun. So porach zimun minayhu, his requirement to do zimun is gone, and therefore kivin shachavrim zim, because his friends already did zimun. V'uadinim lo hayu b'chol chabura ela shleisha, and so too, if there were originally 3 people, v'holach echad mikol chabura koden zimun, and one of the group went away, v'nischabru ela l'shleisha, and somebody else joined the group. Yeah, someone popped in for dessert or something. Again, parach zimun me'elu hashleisha kimin shekvar zimnu chaburosam alfishle zimnu mohem. Even though they didn't do zimun with them, even if you've got 3 groups, 4 people, and one from each group come away, and then they come together, since the original 3 groups then do their own zimun, this new 4th group have got no chiyuv zimun because their individual zimun has sort of disappeared. It's just dissipated. Yeah, you get that? So says the Mishnah Berurah Lamed Gimel, Parach zimun minayu. Once the original group, each of the original groups have done their zimun, then the chiyuv is gone. Now, what does that mean? So the Mishnah Berurah makes a very important point. Again, what are we talking about? 3 groups of 4 people. One from each of the group move away, and you've now got a new 4th group of 3 people. But the original 3 groups do their zimun, so then their zimun is gone, and the new 4th group of 3 people, they can't do their zimun because their chiyuv is gone. Says the Mishnah Berurah, that's only if they didn't eat together. But if the 4th group sat down and ate more together, there's a new chiyuv of zimun. That's what he says. Says the Mishnah Berurah Lamed Gimel, ubazeh dafkim lo ochlu ach kach yachtov. Avalim ochlu ach kach yachad, then mitztarfin, they create a new chiyuv of zimun. And you can't compare it to the previous sif, because in this sif they're doing a zimun, in the previous one not. Lamed Dalet, Kivin Shechavreim Zimnu Aime Behalacha, Lamed Hey Ubo Echad, i.e., where if the original three groups were only three, and then one from each group left, and then one person joined each of the three groups, Hainu Echad Min Ashuk, Ochal Ma'at, B'Soif Sudasim, and Nistar Fimoyim, he joined them. V'lishna D'Chol Chabura, Kozam Achav Lav Dafka, and it's Lav Dafka, there were, three people joined the three groups. Dafidu Rak L'Chaburachas, even if it was only one of the groups. In Kain, Parach Zimun Min Echad, V'Nisha Kan El Shnaim. And you've only got two, because again, that last point, what's he saying? You've got three groups of three people, and one from each of the group moved, and you've got a new fourth group of three people. Someone came from the Shuk. The Lashon of the Mechaber is there are three people came from the Shuk and joined one each of the remaining three groups, so they did their Zimun either that way. Says the Mishmur, Lav Dafka 3. Even if one person came and joined one of the groups, then the person from that group, his Zimun is gone, and therefore he would not be able to join to do his Zimun. Okay, let's just finish off the Ramah. Says the Haggah, Sholosh Chaburos She'ochlu. Three groups ate, Ubechol Chabura Shlosh Bnei Adam. So three groups of three people. Also, L'kol Echad Mipared Mikol Chabura Lezam B'Yachad. That's what I was saying before. Really, you should not leave. If you are part of a group of three, you should not leave that group. Because if you leave that group, you've just destroyed their zimun. But if there were four people in the group, then the fourth person can go. And then because you've left a group of three, and that three will still be able to do the zimun, and the fourth has joined others and will be able to do the zimun there, that would be okay. Says the Mishnah Berurah Lamed Vav, Mutar Lipared, Umayir Shekol HaChaburos Hoyu Mitchila Gamkein B'Bayis Zeh, Ela Shelo Nistar Yachad. You've got the original groups were all in one setting, one house. It's just they didn't sit together. Why? Why is he going to say that? Because if you're talking about a different place, he should go back to the original place where he ate to do his Birchas HaMazon. So clearly we're talking about a case where they're all in one setting. Okay, say that.